In 2015, One Direction, the biggest boy band at the time, announced that Zayn, one of its 5 members, was leaving the group because he wanted to be a normal 22-year-old who is able to relax and have some private time out of the spotlight. Zayn also said, "I know I have 4 friends for life in Louis, Liam, Harry, and Niall. I know they will continue to be the best band in the world." But what happened next was the complete opposite. Zayn did not continue a normal life. Instead, he debuted as a soloist. One Direction, now a 4-member group, continued their planned tour without Zayn, released their promised follow-up album, and announced that they were going on an indefinite hiatus.
You're taking a year-long break.
Would you a year off?
You're not going to be like years and years though,
No. Let's give it 18 months.
It's been more than 8 years since One Direction's hiatus, time in which the members have revealed how they really feel about each other and the group. For Liam, the One Direction members were more co-workers than actual friends.
You know, the day the band ended, I was like, thank Lord for that. And I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me for saying that, but I needed to stop or it would kill me.
Zayn said that he actually left the group because he was unhappy with the group's musical direction and his inability to put any input in, and said that One Direction's music was generic. After Zayn left, he had public arguments with Louis on Twitter, and recently Louis revealed that he really thought their hiatus was going to last a year or 2, and that's why he took the longest to start his solo career. In recent years, the tension between the members has cooled down a lot. They now seem to be more respectful towards one another, but the idea of a reunion seems highly unlikely since they've confessed that they don't really talk to each other anymore, and they are all very focused on their solo careers. But this whole indefinite hiatus lie has left some kind of trauma on fandoms and pop culture. Although it's hard to admit it, One Direction is not on an indefinite hiatus. They actually disbanded in 2016. This is why when the current biggest band, BTS, announced that they were going on a temporary rest from group activities, many who don't really know BTS's story instantly assumed that history was going to repeat itself. Many said that BTS is going on a quote-unquote hiatus that One Direction went through, and that they are not actually coming back. And whenever a BTS fan says that BTS is actually coming back because they said they will, many respond this exact same phrase. That was what One Direction said.
Indefinite hiatus, man. Do you know what that means?
One Direction is still on it.
Yeah, exactly. You know what indefinite hiatus means?
Reminds me of One Direction. P.S. They never did get back together.
But BTS's story as a group and as individual artists, as well as the inevitable circumstances and reasons as to why the BTS members are on rest, are completely different to One Direction's. And this frantic reaction by the media and the general public say a lot about how One Direction destroyed the true meaning of hiatus by pretending to be friends and giving false hopes to millions of young fans. On the other hand, there is multiple evidence that can convince even the biggest skeptic that a BTS comeback will happen. There is even a contract and an approximate date of when this will happen, and it's not too far away. Probably the biggest mistake of Western media and the general public is treating BTS as a Western act who follow the Western rules of music and pop culture. Because in Korea, if a music label and the members of a group say hiatus, it actually means hiatus. This is especially true because hiatus are not very common in K-pop, but disbandments are. So music labels and groups don't really have the need to give false hopes to fans because every year dozens of groups disband and dozens of groups debut. And it's common for the performers part of a disbanded K-pop group to re-debut either as soloists or as part of another group. Disbandment is not a word that groups avoid. However, it's true that BTS is different from these K-pop groups because they are some of the biggest artists on the planet, and their disbandment or hiatus would be news around the world as a negative thing. And that was what happened.
BTS are going on hiatus.
The boys of BTS are headed in different directions.
BTS just announced they're going on a hiatus to focus on their solo careers.
I don't know if I think they're gonna come back.
BTS just revealed some major news, and it's not smooth like butter.
Like, maybe it's time to move on. The K-pop supergroup broke hearts around the world, announcing they're going to take some time to focus on solo projects. Their management says it's not a hiatus, so kind of sounds like it. I mean, I guess all good things must come to an end, right?
So to translate the idea, tainted by One Direction, BTS and their label had to go out of their ways to reassure global fans and the general public that their rest from group activities actually means rest from group activities. There are many reasons why BTS's and One Direction's hiatus are different, but here's one. For One Direction, it was a decision. For BTS, it was unavoidable. Whether the BTS members wanted it or not, it's mandatory for every Korean man to enlist in the military for 18 months. So BTS planned to announce in 2020 that they were about to serve their mandatory military service and going into a 2-year rest in very careful ways, because the hiatus stigma that One Direction left in fandoms was too big to simply say that they were going on a hiatus, because no one would actually believe their words. This is why BTS prepared a lot of special content in 2019 and 2020 to promise their fandom army and the media that a comeback after their enlistment will happen, including promoting their album Map of the Soul 7 as their biggest and closing project of their first chapter as BTS. Many songs from this album were past BTS songs reimagined. They plan to promote this album with a massive global tour. They also said goodbye to 2019 by revisiting their old eras and performing their old songs in award shows. They also plan to release their Korean anthology album Proof and their Japanese anthology album The Best as projects that mark the first of many chapters. And they also said that BTS's chapter 2 was about to start.
We believe that this awards opens the beginning of our new chapter.
But all of this is just their reward to fans and their artistic projects. What can actually convince even the biggest skeptic that they will come back is their brand new 7-year contract to continue being part of BTS under their label Big Hit Music. They also planned and did end up releasing statements on how important and meaningful it was for them to re-sign with their label for 7 more years. This could work as a promise to fans, the media, and the skeptical general public that they will come back. It's not just their word, they literally have a contract to prove it. But the BTS law happened, burying the news of the BTS contract renewal.
BTS가 청년층들을 대표하고 있고 또 청년층들로부터 아주 널리 공감을 받고 있기 때문에
Jin is currently in the military and the other members are scheduled to go in the next 12 months.
From K-pop supergroup BTS, Jin, the eldest member, has enlisted in the South Korean army because Korean men are required to enlist in the military by age 28.
But everything that is happening right now was supposed to happen in 2020. Their announcement of a temporary rest from group activities and their military enlistment was supposed to start at the end of 2020, not at the end of 2022. But all of these plans were shattered because of COVID-19, which canceled all their concerts around the world and the big promotions they had planned for their last album of Chapter 1. It seemed like this could have been a bittersweet see you later, because although they had a new BTS contract, all their big plans were cancelled. But what many were not expecting was that the government was about to release a new law that lets global artists like BTS to serve their military mandatory service at age 30 instead of age 28. This new law was nicknamed the BTS law because they are the only ones who meet the challenging criteria. Thanks to this law, BTS didn't have to go to the military for 2 more years. During this time, BTS released a pandemic album, a trilogy of English songs, collaborations, and their Chapter 1 Korean anthology album, which was supposed to be released alongside their Japanese anthology album. They also had their Permission to Dance tour. After all of this, BTS announced that they were taking a rest from group activities because they are going to the military. But 2 years after the announcement of the renewed 7-year contract passed, and the general public is not aware that it exists. This is how the confusion started. This is why many think they are not coming back, despite there being a contract that says they will. The members said that they renegotiated their new BTS contract and they consulted these new terms with their parents and big hit executives. This is why their current solo projects are still considered BTS projects. For example, all the members have their own personal Instagram accounts, but their label doesn't manage these accounts. Their management only has access to BTS's group account. This is why the members' individual promotions, although they are considered solo projects, are still published on BTS's YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and other social media platforms. Whenever they have collaborations, it's always attributed to a member of BTS. If it's Jimin, it's Jimin of BTS. If it's Suga, it's Suga of BTS. If it's Jungkook, it's Jungkook of BTS.
I go by the name of RM of BTS. I'm J-Hope from BTS.
안녕하세요, BTS입니다.
The members are also considered solo artists on the streaming platforms, but if you go to their physical album's credit page, it still says BTS because their solo albums are still BTS's projects in a way. This is not what happened with One Direction. When One Direction announced their hiatus, their contract ended, and they all signed to different labels as soloists. So you will never see One Direction's official page promoting their solo albums, and you will never see a Harry Styles song being promoted as a song by Harry of One Direction, because the members are now completely independent from each other. Their contract with One Direction and their label cycle ended on 2016, but with BTS's hiatus, a new BTS contract started. This is why it can be frustrating for ARMYs when the media or people who don't know anything about BTS or their story in the music industry instantly assume that BTS broke up and they are never coming back. BTS even gave an approximate date of when they are coming back, and the younger members are basically going to the military earlier than they should be, just so they can return as a group as soon as possible. BTS have schedules as a group programmed for 2030, leaving the question to many: are they being exploited? Do they actually want to leave the group and become soloists like One Direction? Are they being forced to be part of BTS forever? The answer they've given multiple times is no, and they even give logical reasons as to why they are the ones making their own artistic decisions, business decisions, and other personal decisions. The general public doesn't really understand how honest the BTS members have been over the years, and how hard their story in the music industry has been. Unlike One Direction, BTS speak about their experience as global artists. If they are burnt out, they say they are.
저희가 되게 심적으로 많이 힘들었었어요. 저희끼리 얘기를 하면서 대체를 할까 말까 고민도 했고.
If they are disappointed by an experience in an American show, they talk about it. If they are sad their demos didn't work out, they say it.
그래서 저는 사실 좀 기대를 했어요. 혹시 내 목소리로 끝나지 않을까. 하지만 슈가 형이 목소리로 끝났다는 거.
If they felt that they were taken advantage of because of their fame, they call it out. One Direction, on the other hand, kept all of this to themselves. They were not open to talk about it when it happened, so when they broke up, they started venting non-stop about it. Another difference is how they started. BTS debuted with almost nothing, and they've shared this struggle for years. They were living together before and after they debuted, creating a family dynamic more than a work dynamic. One Direction, on the other hand, had almost no time to form true, long-lasting friendships. They were formed on a TV show, and a couple of months later, they were in America promoting their first single. All of this is without counting the massive amount of racism that BTS received in America. People were screaming racist insults to their faces in red carpets. All of these struggles, from starting from nothing to feeling like aliens in the industry,
we're like aliens to the music industry for America,
has made the BTS members want to fight the fight as a group, because as a group they feel stronger, while the One Direction members feel trapped. But many non-fans are still skeptic, and I think they are skeptic because they see BTS as a boy band like One Direction, or because they see BTS as an exploited K-pop group. And for those people, I hope this answers your doubts. It's public knowledge that the 7 BTS members have renegotiated their contracts, but even with their old contracts, the BTS members always had more power in making their own decisions than the majority of K-pop acts. And even with all of those existing liberties, it's assumed that their new contract gives them even more liberties and power. And it can be assumed that their label accepted this compromise, because BTS built that company basically from the ground. BTS made the small Korean independent label Big Hit Entertainment become Hive Corporation, which now owns multiple labels. So despite having offers from many Korean and American labels, BTS chose to stay on their once small label because they are now looking for longevity as BTS, and this can only come by having full power in their artistic decisions and not exhausting themselves by touring non-stop and producing 1 or more albums every year. We don't know what this new BTS contract says, but by the way the members talk about it, many assume that it gives them the freedom to slow down. So BTS having schedules programmed for 2025 and 2030 does not mean that they are being exploited or they are overworking themselves. They are actually getting closer to a healthier schedule. No more tours non-stop, no more 2 album releases a year, and no more crazy exhaustion like their past schedules, because that was what killed One Direction, and BTS want to prevent that. I honestly find everyone's response to BTS's hiatus kind of interesting and funny. One Direction left such a big trauma in fandoms and pop culture that BTS cannot even say the word hiatus without everyone freaking out. The first time they talked about the hiatus, many translators said that it was actually a mistranslation, and the word they said was actually rest. Then Jungkook had to go live to explain that they were not going on a hiatus, and then their label clarified that it was a rest from group activities. But I think it doesn't matter what you want to call it. A group's hiatus is a rest from group activities. But BTS had to use another word because One Direction lied and changed the meaning of hiatus. A real hiatus is BTS's rest from group activities. BTS re-signed their BTS contract, but One Direction ended theirs. BTS's solo projects are still considered BTS projects, but One Direction solo projects are not part of One Direction. When the BTS members are performing solo, they call their fans ARMY.
First, I want to thank my fans, ARMY.
But when the One Direction members perform solo, they don't call their fans Directioners. So stop saying that's what One Direction said when it comes to BTS's rest, because their situations are completely different. BTS's rest is inevitable, and if there's something BTS has always done, it's keep their promises. So support BTS's solo projects in this new BTS chapter, and let's welcome them as a group again in 2025.